Starting off at number 10, we have São Tomé and Príncipe with about 8,000 visitors. The African island nation of São Tomé and Príncipe remains one of the least visited countries in the world. The island's sugar-based economy gave way to coffee and cocoa in the 19th century. Together, the islands comprise the second smallest African country after Seychelles, and at 225 kilometers off the northwestern coast of Gabon, they are seldom visited because of their relative remoteness. Up at number 9, we have a country called Norway with just under 8,000 visitors. The tiny, very rocky island nation is situated in the middle of the South Pacific. At only 260 square kilometers large and with around 1,000 inhabitants, Norway is also one of the smallest countries in the world. Surrounded by protective reefs and presided over by a sunny tropical island, Norway has one very unique trait: high levels of natural radioactivity in the soil. But don't worry, no negative effects have been reported. Making it in 8th place, we have Libya with about 6,250 visitors. Though the 17th largest nation in the world, Libya has more than its fair share of problems. Civil war has plagued the nation, and clashes are frequent throughout the country, with attacks affecting even hotels hosting tourists. 90% of the land is also covered by extremely dry desert with harsh climates. In fact, it's only in the northern regions of the country on the Mediterranean Sea that they enjoy a milder climate. But those tourists that dare to brave the environmental and political conditions will be rewarded with amazing historical heritage and views. In 7th place, we have Marshall Islands with about 6,000 visitors. The Marshall Islands comprises 29 coral atolls with over 1,000 islands and islets just north of the equator. Situated about halfway between Hawaii and Australia, residents rely heavily on fishing. In fact, in 2011, the government actually reserved an area of nearly 2 million square kilometers as a shark sanctuary, establishing the largest one in the world. The country is especially friendly to Americans as the US dollar is the national currency. Now, interestingly, it was the site of the largest US nuclear weapons test in history, with fallout continuing to impact the nation. Though radioactivity isn't the nation's only worry, as it is considered the most endangered country in the world due to flooding and climate change. So if you're going to visit, you might want to do it soon. Up at number 6, we have Equatorial Guinea with 5,700 visitors. Divided into a mainland and 5 volcanic islands, the African nation of Equatorial Guinea is hugely unknown, mainly because of the political issues that have plagued the country for centuries. Despite the huge oil wealth, very little of the wealth has trickled down to the poverty-stricken people. However, Equatorial Guinea offers a rare opportunity to experience Spanish colonial history and beauty. Natural wonders are the biggest draw to the nation, with outstanding volcanic views, seaside sand stretches, and an unspoiled jungle environment. Animal lovers are in luck as the rainforest is home to numerous endangered primates, and the beaches host nesting sea turtles. All right, and halfway in our list today, we have South Sudan with 5,500 visitors. Having recently split from Sudan, South Sudan is one of the newest countries in the world. Because of a diverse population, including Muslims, Christians, and animists, and equally diverse geography, South Sudan has been afflicted by civil war for more than 40 years. Even with tumultuous politics and a potentially dangerous atmosphere, Sudanese hospitality remains second to none, and those who venture into this country often report it as one of their favorites. With a rich and ancient cultural history, South Sudan has delicious cuisine as well, including Turkish, Egyptian, and Ethiopian influences, as well as many interesting sites to visit. In 4th place, we have Kiribati with 4,000 visitors. Comprising of 33 islands, Kiribati is an extremely geographically isolated country with a total land area of 800 square kilometers spread over 3.5 million square kilometers waters of ocean. This is a prime destination for divers and bird watchers, especially on Christmas Island, as millions of birds head there each year. Interestingly, Kiribati is the only country in the world to fall into all 4 hemispheres, straddling the equator and extending into the eastern and western hemispheres. It was also the first country to see the dawn of the 3rd millennium on the 1st of January 2000. And in 3rd place, we have Tuvalu with 2,000 visitors. The tiny nation of Tuvalu is spread across 9 islands with a total area of just 26 square kilometers. The secluded islands lie north of Fiji, halfway between Hawaii and Australia. To get there, you'll have to catch a propeller plane from Fiji Airways that flies only twice a week. Featuring a vast diversity of marine life, Tuvalu is the ultimate diving and snorkeling vacation. There are 9 different coral atolls, numerous coral reefs, lagoons, and small islands to spend days or even weeks exploring. Once you're ready for the dry land experience, you can enjoy a distinct, friendly, and protected Polynesian culture with unique arts, crafts, music, dance, and stories. And at number 2, 2nd place, we have Somalia with about 1,000 visitors. Numerous travel warnings are in effect for Somalia due to armed conflict, but before the civil wars began in the early 1990s, Somalia was extremely welcoming to tourists. The country is especially notable for its waterfalls, mountain ranges, and national parks. The wild areas are home to a vast number of interesting wildlife. This includes lions, cheetahs, spotted hyenas, leopards, onyx, and ostrich. Additionally, the country has the longest coastline of any of the African continent and possesses innumerable beaches. And in 1st place, the country with the least visitors is Nauru with less than 1,000 visitors. Plunked in the middle of the Pacific Ocean, this tiny island nation covers less than 21 square kilometers and is home to less than 10,000 inhabitants. Only one airline serves this country with an old Boeing 737, and tourist infrastructure like hotels and restaurants are very minimal. Freight deliveries are rare and employment is even scarcer. Healthcare is basic at best. In spite of its present economic gloom, the island still offers glimpses of its former glory, with turbulent surf surrounding the coastline and seabirds swooping over the green island cliffs. For World War II buffs, there are also remnants of Japanese occupation scattered around the island. The enormous skeletal remains of mining infrastructure are also truly remarkable to see.
We have the country of Guinea with a GDP per capita of $2,338 US. Although very rich in natural resources, the country of Guinea faces issues such as poor management and lack of safe infrastructure. Getting important resources such as electricity and water are also a challenge in the country, which makes running a business very costly. These factors also make foreign investors worried about coming to Guinea. The country number 9 is Eritrea with a GDP per capita of $2,102.95 US. Eritrea is a small country in Africa and it has seen some growth in its economy in recent years. However, it still ranks among the world's poorest country, with an average person earning less than $1,500 US a year. A large amount of the country's GDP is made up of remittance, which is money sent to residents from relatives that live in other countries. Country number 8 is Madagascar with a GDP per capita of $1,452.60 US. Madagascar is the 4th largest island in the world, and the average person is 42% poorer today than he was 50 years ago. And this is according to the World Bank. 3/4 of the population of Madagascar are now estimated by the United Nations to live on less than $1.25 US per day. With the majority of the population dependent on agriculture for their survival, the country's economy is really exposed to weather-related disasters. Next on the list, we have Mozambique with a GDP per capita of $1,180.37 US. Mozambique is located on the southeast coast of Africa, bordering Zimbabwe and Malawi, as well as South Africa. Unfortunately, it too is struggling with crippling poverty. There's a lot of corruption, and that is said to be a massive problem problem in the country, which hinders the economic success of the residents. Much of the rural Mozambique lives on less than $1.25 US per day. The country number 6 is Malawi with a GDP per capita of $1,163.30 US. In Malawi, well over 85% of the country's population live in rural area and is dependent on subsistence farming. The country's economy is fragile and very dependent on foreign aid. Back in the year 2000, however, the International Monetary Fund, or the IMF, stopped its aid payments to Malawi, saying that widespread corruption and mishandling of the funds by the government was the main reason. The country halfway in at number 5 is Liberia, and they have a GDP per capita of $1,161.20 US. Unfortunately, Liberia is often pointed to as an example of a failed state. The country has suffered and struggled a lot for a variety of reasons, including an outbreak of Ebola in recent years, as well as the rise of militant groups and warlords who are controlling resources. The country number 4 is Niger with a GDP per capita of $932 US. Niger is named after the Niger River, and Niger has oil reserves, but internal problems have led to major economic issues. While Niger is the largest country in West Africa, most of its territory is covered by the Sahara Desert, which limits the economic activities which the country's population can engage in. Also, the country is landlocked and poor in resources. Only 3 nations left. At number 3, we have the Democratic Republic of Congo with a GDP per capita of $930.50 USD. The Democratic Republic of Congo, which is different from the Republic of Congo, and it's really unfortunate for this country because it has been in the middle of all sorts of military and political issues for a long period of time, and this is why we have such a low GDP per capita. And one of the saddest things about this is that over the recent years it has actually fallen. Then there's also the Central African Republic with a GDP per capita of $774.70 USD. The economy of Central African Republic is largely dependent on the exports of diamonds, which brings in between 40 to 55% of the country's exports revenue. However, it's estimated that up to half of those diamonds are sold on the black market, which denies the government of tax revenues, as well as hardworking business people are getting completely ripped off. Now, the number 1 most poor nation in the world is Burundi with a GDP per capita of $660.30 USD. Burundi tops this list, and it's another African nation with an overwhelming majority of its population depending on agriculture. According to the IMF data, over 80% of the country's population lives below the poverty line, and problems with government corruption and coups have really crippled Burundi's ability to actually develop as a nation. And as a result, poverty is widespread. So guys, that brings us to the end of this episode. Definitely an eye-opening one. Being on the poorest country list is definitely not an achievement that you want associated with your country. And we can see that a lot of these countries are fully rich with resources and capable minds and people. However, it's just unfortunate that based on how their systems are structured, government and political issues and corruption, you can see how they can really affect a nation.
All right, number 10 on our list today probably doesn't come as a surprise to you, as North Korea is quite notorious for their reputation around the globe, especially when it comes to tourists visiting their country. I guess it's fair to say that whatever happens in North Korea stays in North Korea. Most of the public in the country have no idea what the outside world has to offer, and truthfully, none of us really know what happens behind their borders unless we've been there. You might be surprised to find out that the only way to access North Korea is through a paid guided tour from China. And while you're on these tours, don't even think about taking photos, interacting with locals, or speaking ill of their leader. And definitely do not try entering North Korea unless you are booked with a tour. To give you an idea of what the tour alone might cost, most guided tours range from $500 to $2,500 US. And I'm sure that does not include the cost of your airline ticket and accommodation. So your desire to go there should be pretty intense if you're going to go through all of that work. Next on our list, we have Saudi Arabia. Now, Saudi Arabia's visa laws are a bit shocking, and this is because when you hear the stipulations on entering the country, you may feel as though they are stuck in the past. Despite the country being quite rich, full of modern cities and grand shopping experiences, not just anyone can enter. Women traveling solo must have a sponsor upon entering the country, and this person needs to be responsible for that female for the entire duration of her trip. Couples who enter Saudi Arabia are expected to be married and provide proof of marriage via a legally certified marriage certificate. Without either of these, your visa would likely be denied. Oh, and we should also mention that if you have an Israel travel stamp anywhere on your passport, you could also have further trouble obtaining a visa. Now, if you don't fall into any of these categories that we mentioned just now, your visa process should hopefully process smoothly. Visas for Saudi Arabia are typically around $123 US. Fancy a visit to Turkmenistan? As you can see, having an invitation letter from a citizen or travel agency of the country you intend to visit is quite a common thing for many of the countries on today's list. But Turkmenistan requires you to have an invitation letter even just to apply for a visa, and this does not secure the process as you could still be denied. Other than the required letter, Turkmenistan isn't overly difficult for travelers. Now, you'll just have to make sure to fill out an immigration card upon arrival and register with the state service within 3 days of arriving in the country. The cost of the Turkmenistan visa ranges between $35 to $50 USD. Not too bad. Next up, we have China. Now, China's visa process isn't as intense as North Korea, but still has its own unique challenges. Most passport holders can travel to China for a period of up to 72 hours without obtaining a visa. For example, if you're just doing a layover or popping in for a day or two, there's no problem there. Just keep in mind they may ask you many questions to make sure you're telling the truth about where you're staying, but most of the time you'll be cleared. Now, if you plan to stay for longer, you'll need to book an appointment in your home country with an accredited travel agency that processes Chinese visas. You will need to prove where you're staying, what day you're flying in, and how long you will be in the country. If you plan to be in China for over 30 days, they'll also want to see a daily itinerary. Prices for the Chinese visa can vary. If you're coming from Canada, it will run you about $162, and coming from the States, it'll be closer to $242. Now, I actually experienced this application process myself as I visited some friends in China a few years ago. It is quite a lengthy process, so start early. Now, this next country is definitely on my list. Angola may or may not be on your list to travel to, mostly because the country is still recovering from years of civil war. Surprisingly, the capital city Luanda has been rated as one of the most expensive cities in the world to visit, and the visa process is not even close to being a smooth one. You'll need an invitation letter, proof of all your hotels, and you'll want to give yourself months to obtain the visa, as many things could go wrong in the process. Also, be mindful to stash away some cash, as visas run for about $120 US, and that's only citizens from 59 countries that can actually obtain the visa. But the visas also come with processing fees and other possible fees upon arrival. Now, it sounds like quite the challenge, but if your heart is set on Angola, then go for it. It's definitely going to be on my future travel list. All right, bringing us halfway through our list today, we have Pakistan. Now, Pakistan does not allow anyone to enter their country without an official invitation from a sponsor. You will be surprised to note, though, that it doesn't have to be someone you know necessarily. It could also be booked by a travel company with package offers. As long as your sponsor is able to write you a letter of invitation explaining their relationship to you and the purpose for your visit, you both provide your IDs, and you are able to submit a completed visa application, you should be all clear to visit. Tourist visas with a 2-week processing time are about $160 US. All right, and next we have beautiful Russia. Russia's visa process is ranked as one of the more expensive visas to obtain. Even if you come from a powerful nation with a strong passport, that will not help making it any easier. Now, it's no surprise that if you expect access to their country, they will want to know all about you. That includes your travel history in the last 10 years. They want to know what you intend to do in their country, and they ask you to pre-book all of your accommodation, so there's not much room to be flexible. And don't think about applying online because that is a no-go. Each visa application comes with taking fingerprints, photos, and a perfect application. One single mistake could cause a total mess and delay. So be sure to give yourself lots of time for your Russia visa to be processed and be ready to fork out the money. Coming from the US, visas run at about $160, and coming from Canada, they are approximately $112. Now, our next country is Nigeria. It is a beautiful country with lots to explore, so the work that you'll put into getting a visa will most likely be worth it. In order to obtain a tourist visa, you'll need a letter of invitation from your host, a confirmed hotel reservation, a valid return airline ticket, evidence of funds to cover your stay in Nigeria, and proof of legal residency from your home country. Costs can range anywhere from $160 to $180 US. Coming in at number 2, we have Bhutan. Bhutan is a country that comes with some unique challenges to get a visa. And it's not because it's overly rigorous, but because the people of Bhutan pride themselves on the quality of life in their country. Now, I had no idea, and maybe you don't either, but they are the first carbon negative country in the world, and they value their national happiness index above all else. So in order to visit Bhutan, you will have to book an all-inclusive package through a travel agent. These packages range from $200 to $300 US per day, and a visa on top of this is approximately $40. But you know what? That's not too bad considering it covers all of your expenses. Definitely seems worth it. And last on today's list, but certainly not least, we have Iran. Iran's visa process varies quite greatly depending on which country you're coming from. Iran has said they are trying to make their process more streamlined, but at this point, you should definitely check to make sure you know the requirements before flying. If you are from Armenia, Azerbaijan, Bolivia, Georgia, Malaysia, Syria, Turkey, or Venezuela, you are eligible for a free visa. Most travelers are eligible for a VOA, or visa on arrival. Though it's important to note that this list does exclude Canada, the United Kingdom, the United States, Afghanistan, Bangladesh, Colombia, India, Iraq, Jordan, Nepal, Pakistan, Somalia, and Sri Lanka. And any travelers who have visited Israel within the last 6 months will likely not be granted entry. On top of all of that, you will also need a visa code when you apply from a registered tour company. The Iran travel visa upon single entry is approximately $190 US. So starting with number 10, the name Kuwait actually means fort. Kuwait is derived from an Arabic word, akwat, which means fortress built near water. Until the 18th century, Kuwait hardly had any settlements, but the area was visited by nomads who would come and go. However, when drought struck the desert area, they built fortified settlements near the coast of the Gulf in what is known today as Kuwait. Moving on to talking about the currency. The Kuwaiti dinar is the official currency of Kuwait. Interestingly, it is subdivided into 1,000 fils. So 1,000 fils would be 1 Kuwaiti dinar. To compare that with Canadian money, 100 cents would equal 1 Canadian dollar. The Kuwaiti dinar was introduced in 1961 to replace the Gulf rupee. At first, it was equivalent to the British pound sterling, but today it is currently the highest currency in the world when measured against the US dollar. So 1 Kuwaiti dinar equals $4.29 Canadian, $3.26 US, and €2.78. The high value rate of its currency is explained by significant oil exports into the global market. Due to the stable petroleum-based economy, highly developed oil production and export, Kuwait is considered to be one of the richest countries in the world. Now that brings us to talk about the oil industry, which is a huge part of Kuwait. Kuwait is actually a major oil supplier. Oil comprises nearly half of Kuwait's GDP. Around 95% of exports and approximately 90% of the government revenue. Kuwait holds approximately 7% of the global oil reserves and has a current production capacity of about 3.15 million barrels per day. The Kuwait Petroleum Corporation, or KPC, has announced its intention to increase oil production capacity to 4 million barrels per day by 2020. Moving on to talk a little bit about culture. So the Sheikh Jabir Al Ahmed Cultural Center, or the JACC, known by most, is informally known as the Kuwait Opera House, and it is a prominent cultural center in Kuwait. Interestingly, it is the largest cultural center and opera house in the Middle East. The center strives to entertain, educate, and inspire the people of Kuwait, offering a range of events in music, theater, films, workshops, and spoken word. Now, the cultural center complex is divided into many different buildings, which include theaters, concert halls, music centers, libraries, a public park, many restaurants, and a large interactive water fountain. The cultural center took 2 years to complete and a budget of $775 million. Moving on to fact number 6, the world's 4th longest sea bridge is in Kuwait. The Sheikh Jabir Al Ahmed Al Sabah Causeway is a mega bridge project with an estimated construction value of approximately $3.6 billion that spans the Bay of Kuwait in 2 directions and comprises of 2 links. The main link, which connects Kuwait City with the future Silk City, and the Doha link, which connects Kuwait City with Doha and the Kuwait Entertainment City. So this project actually forms part of the Kuwait National Development Plan for 2035. The bridges are named after the late Sheikh Jabir Al Sabah, who reigned during the Gulf War, to commemorate his contribution to the development of Kuwait. It is one of the largest and most challenging transport infrastructure projects in Kuwait, as well as the entire Middle East region. The main link is the 4th longest road bridge in the world at 36.14 kilometers. Both bridges have a combined length of 48.5 kilometers. It leads from the capital, Kuwait City's free trade zone, to an uninhabited area set to become another thriving port, Silk City. Bringing us to fact number 5, where we're actually going to talk about this Silk City. The Medina Al Harir, Arabic for Silk City, is a proposed 250 kilometers squared urban area in the Subiya region of northeastern Kuwait. So apart from a free trade zone and seaport, the Silk City will have an airport, an Olympic stadium, a tower taller than Dubai's Burj Khalifa, and housing for up to 700,000 people. Now, the cost of this long-term mega development is estimated to be more than $100 billion, hence the causeway's strategic importance to the country. Now, interestingly, much of the free trade zone development will be done in partnership with China after the 2 countries signed memorandums in the past several years. The vision is for the causeway to establish Kuwait as an international trading center connecting the Middle East with the rest of Asia. Next, we're going to talk about shopping. Now, Kuwait is home to the Avenues Mall Kuwait. The Avenues Mall is the largest shopping mall in the country. The mall opened its doors in April 2007 under the patronage of Sheikh Sabah Al Ahmed Al Sabah. It was the winner of the ICSC Gold Award for Best Shopping Center of 2013 under the expansion and design category in the Middle East and North Africa. Since it first opened in 2007, the Avenues has continuously developed and enhanced the shopping experience in Kuwait to outstanding levels. It has set new benchmarks and standards throughout the industry. It is considered to be one of the largest malls in the world, with more than 1,100 stores spread over 12 districts. The districts are inspired by classical and modern architecture. They include the First Avenue, Second Avenue, Prestige, Grand Avenue, Souk, the Mall, Soku, the Arcades, Grand Plaza, Electra, the Forum, and the Garden, and parking spaces that fit more than 10,000 cars. You guys, I've been there. It's an amazing sight to see. Any store you could think of is pretty much in this shopping center and restaurant as well. All right, moving on to fact number 3, no income tax. Yes, Kuwait is among 15 countries around the world who do not have income taxes. How is this possible? Well, Kuwait is a small, wealthy country that earned its fortune through the oil industry, so it doesn't need to levy an income tax. making it a very attractive living and working destination for expatriates. Speaking of expatriates, that's going to bring us to talking about the population of Kuwait. The current population of Kuwait is 4,288,398 as of Wednesday, October 14, 2020, based on Worldometer elaboration of the latest United Nations data. Now, shockingly, 2/3 of the population are non-nationals. Expatriates account for about 70% of Kuwait's population, including 1.1 million Arab expatriates and 1.4 million Asian expatriates. The Kuwait government rarely grants citizenship to foreigners to maintain its status quo. Now, Kuwait actually recognizes itself as a very expat-friendly country, as it is highly Americanized, especially in the hub of Kuwait City. Now, as I mentioned a little bit earlier, obtaining permanent residency in Kuwait generally requires you to have either Kuwaiti relatives or formal employment within the country. Kuwait also doesn't have much need for foreign investment, so citizenship by investment is also not a possibility. And actually, all businesses in Kuwait must be officially owned by Kuwaiti nationals. Alright, moving on to our last fact of today. Number 1 brings us to talk about the beautiful Kuwait Towers. So in the Sharq district of downtown Kuwait City lies one of the country's most visually arresting landmarks, the Kuwait Towers. With its panoramic views and striking modern design, this group of symbolic towers has won iconic architectural status globally. They have become a symbol of the nation's prosperity and urbanization, known to the locals as Al-Abraj, translated simply to the towers. The monument's prominent location is on the Arabian Gulf Sea front, which adds to popularity among tourists and locals alike. Now, the core inspiration for the tower's design came from a balance between the modernity and tradition, with the rocket and globe form representing the intertwined nature of two fundamental ideals, humanity and technology. The main tower rises to 185 meters and is one where you will be headed when visiting the towers. It has 2 spheres, one of which is called the viewing sphere. It has a revolving viewing platform at a height of 120 meters and offers sweeping views of the surrounding area. The tower also houses a selection of restaurants which are very popular among locals. The middle tower is true to its original function and still is used as a water tower, and the smaller tower, which is designed simply for aesthetic reasons, is used as a source of electricity and illuminates the other 2 towers. For those seeking a unique gastronomic experience, the 90-seater restaurant located within the tower sphere is a fun place to dine. For another awesome experience, be sure to check out the towers at night as they light up with various designs. Number 10, the UAE is home to the world's most impressive police cars. That's right, Dubai's police officers are cruising around and keeping the peace in some of the top luxury vehicles. In fact, the Dubai Police's fleet of vehicles includes supercars like Bugatti, Ferrari, Bentley, Lamborghini, Camaro, Mercedes, and many more. I wonder if people get arrested just for the experience of driving around in one of those bad boys. I mean, I highly doubt it, but it's an interesting thought at least, right? You might also be surprised to know that the UAE has incredibly high literacy rates. The UAE has one of the most impressive literacy rates in the world, with a general literacy rate of 93%. Amongst women, this figure is even higher at 95.8%. And 77% of Emirati women enroll in higher education. In fact, 70% of all university graduates in the country are women, which, as a woman myself, I have to say is pretty darn impressive and certainly something for the country to be proud of. Now, we've all heard of world records, but the UAE holds some unusual world records. Of the many Guinness World Records that the UAE holds, no, seriously, they have so many, you've got to look them up. Now, some of the world records are really well known, such as the Burj Khalifa, the world's tallest tower, and the largest picture frame called the Dubai Frame. But there are also some more obscure world records held by the UAE. For example, they hold the world record for the most dominoes toppled in a circular field. And it was 89,995 dominoes, in case you were curious, as well as the biggest cup of tea in the world, measured in at 5,000 liters. I mean, they probably gave tea to everyone that day. They also hold the record for the heaviest vehicle pulled by hair and the fastest 10-meter meters completed by a horse on its hind legs in a record-breaking 9.2 seconds. I don't know about you, but I definitely would have paid to see that last record being broken. And as one of the world's most popular destinations and transfer routes, it's no surprise that the UAE has 9 airports in commercial service. The Emirates Airport is one of the busiest airports in the world, ranging from total flights per minute to total thousands of flights per week. Due to the United Arab Emirates air traffic, the country consists of world-class airports classified by their services, performance, quality, and infrastructure. The biggest is Dubai International Airport, ranked as the world's busiest airport for international passenger traffic for 6 consecutive years. Some of the other top airports in the UAE include Abu Dhabi International Airport, Sharjah International Airport, Ras Al Khaimah Airport, Al Ain International Airport, and Al Maktoum International Airport. Coming in at number 6, well, 6 of the world's tallest hotels are in the UAE, and all of them, surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, are in Dubai. Leading the way at 356 meters tall is the 4-star Gavora Hotel on Sheikh Zayed Road, which is 1 meter taller than the 355 meters tall JW Marriott Marquis. The SLS Dubai Hotel and Residences, the Rose Rehan by Rotana, the Burj Al Arab, and the Jumeirah Emirates Towers are also all in the top 10 tallest hotels in the world. And up at number 5, the halfway point today, the UAE turns 51. Yes, the UAE is a fairly young country. On December 2nd, 1971, the UAE was officially formed through the combining of 6 emirates: Abu Dhabi, Ajman, Dubai, Fujairah, Sharjah, and Al Quwain. Ras Al Khaimah, the 7th emirate, joined the federation on February 10th, 1972. And you may not be aware of this, but there is a building that leans more than the Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy. Yes, it's true. Abu Dhabi's Capitol Gate building leans more than the Leaning Tower of Pisa. In 2010, the mixed-use hotel and office building was certified as the world's furthest leaning man-made tower by Guinness World Records. The Capitol Gate building leans at 18 degrees. That's over 4 times that of Italy's famous Leaning Tower of Pisa. Now, I suppose rolling office chairs would be out of the question in this glass-faced building. Although in reality, I'm sure that the genius architects who put this building together also made sure that all the floors inside the structure itself are level. At least I would hope so. We know that the world is going places with AI, or artificial intelligence, and Dubai is leading that with the world's first Minister of Artificial Intelligence. Omar bin Sultan Al Olama has held the position of Minister of State for Artificial Intelligence since it was created in 2017. I was shocked to learn that he assumed the role at the very young age of 27. That's quite amazing. The new minister was appointed as part of the UAE's mission to be at the forefront of the global technological revolution that, among other things, plans to build homes on Mars by the year 2117. That would be something to see. And did you know that the UAE has no rivers? Well, it's true. While the UAE doesn't have any permanent rivers flowing through the country, there are plenty of cool wadis to check out. Now, for those of you who don't know, a wadi is also known as a valley, a ravine, or a channel that is filled with water only during the rainier months, and then they dry out during the drier months. So, no rivers, no permanent rivers, but plenty of wadis. And up at number 1, we have the most important fact, I think, as a traveler, that it's populated by people of over 200 different nationalities. With a population of 9.99 million as of 2021, more than 80% of UAE residents are expats. Shocking. And they are all originating from more than 200 countries around the world. Citizens from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and the Philippines make up the largest percentage of expats in the UAE. quite interesting.
Qatar has been ruled by the Al Thani family since the early 1900s, when it was controlled by the British. On July 17, 1913, Sheikh Abdullah bin Qasim Al Thani became the ruler of Qatar. At the time, Qatar's primary industry was pearling and fishing. The country at the time was dealing with widespread poverty, malnutrition, and disease from the collapse of the pearl trade in the 1920s. In 1939, oil was discovered in the city of Dukhan, but development on the field was slow until 1949 because of World War II. While the oil discovery was great, it was nothing compared to the natural gas reserve found 30 years later. In 1951, Qatar produced 46,500 barrels of oil a day, amounting to $4.2 million in revenue. The discovery of offshore oil fields led to an increase in production to 230,000 barrels per day. Then, Qatar began a slow modernization process. The country's first school, hospital, and power plant, and even telephone exchange all opened in the 1950s. Oil revenue steadily increased through the 1960s as the Al Thani family grew stronger by placing relatives in high government positions. However, oil production is not expected to remain at its peak levels of 500,000 barrels a day because of the oil fields are projected to be mostly depleted by the year 2023. But Qatar has natural gas reserves to compensate for that. Qatar's reserves of gas are the third largest in the world. Qatar's reserves are estimated to be at 896 trillion cubic feet. In the year 1971, the world's largest natural gas field, the South Pars North Dome gas condensate field, was discovered off the coast of Qatar. But the crash of the oil prices in the 1980s stopped the growth of the economy. By the year 1995, the situation in Qatar had not improved until Hamad bin Khalifa Al Thani took power in a coup, and then Qatar became a very powerful force. Hamad saw that keeping a low profile could be dangerous and set a whole new direction for the country. So how exactly did Hamad raise Qatar's profile in the world? What he ended up doing was pretty big. So first, he let the US set up its regional military headquarters, the Al Udeid Air Base, outside the capital city of Doha. The partnership with the US military has given Qatar a new level of security. Hamad then went on to integrate Qatar into the global economy. He built the world's largest facilities for condensing liquid natural gas and began exporting liquid natural gas for the first time. Following that, over the past 15 years, 14 liquid natural gas plants have been built in partnership with international oil companies. In the late 1990s, Qatar entered in production sharing agreements with several international oil companies. And in 1996, for those of you who keep up to date with anything to do with the news, well, you probably know about this. Hamad launched Al Jazeera, which is a 24-hour news station that combined aggressive reporting, high production value, as well as an Islamic worldview. Al Jazeera became huge, and the purpose of this organization was really about enhancing Qatar's visibility as well as its influence. But the channel has gone on to be one of the most important broadcasters in the whole Arab world when it comes to news. Qatar's GDP has skyrocketed over the past 15 years thanks to steady oil production and high natural gas production. In regards to planning for the future depletion of its oil, well, Qatar has taken measures to diversify its economy. In the year 1998, the government built Education City, which is a huge campus that supports 6 American and 2 European universities, as well as research centers. Qatar has a sovereign wealth fund of $170 billion. Then in the year 2005, Qatar established the Qatar Investment Authority to recycle oil and gas income into other income streams. In other words, it was set up to buy a lot of things around the world and thus reduces the country's exposure to the oil price. In London alone, it owns Harrods, the Shard, the Chelsea Barracks site, the US Embassy, and the Olympic Village site, among many others. It is also the largest shareholder in Sainsbury, which is just over a quarter of the business. And check this, guys, it also co-owns Miramax Films after purchasing it from Disney with a group of other investors. The The Qatar Financial Center was built in 2005 to develop Qatar's financial services industry. The country believes it can become a financial services leader for the Gulf states thanks to its relative stability and large base of capital. In 2006, Qatar passed Indonesia to become the largest exporter of liquid natural gases in the world, with revenues from oil and natural gas amounting to 60% of Qatar's GDP. But more competition was coming, with liquid natural gas production booming in places like the United States as well as Australia. And then in December of 2010, Qatar was selected as host of the 2022 FIFA World Cup. And because of that, Qatar promised to build 12 state-of-the-art stadiums that would employ cooling technology so players could escape the heat. Qatar has positioned itself as a sporting hub for the region, hosting or planning to host numerous global sporting events. And last June, it was alleged that Qatar spent $5 million on bribes to secure the 2022 World Cup bid. Switzerland is now opening an investigation into mismanagement and money laundering related to Qatar's bid. So there's still quite a bit of controversy going on there, but hey, Qatar has really set itself up powerfully to be a powerhouse nation in the world. The country at number 10 is Belgium. Let's take a look to see what Belgium has to offer. Why is it such a peaceful country? Well, judging by the Global Peace Index, the country of Belgium is one of the best places to live in all of Europe, as well as on the planet in general. It's located in the heart of Europe, and it's a very beautiful country. And it's home to some very special places like Brussels. And of course, that's the capital of Belgium. It's also home to the European Union as well as NATO. And now Belgium, it has a lot of medieval cities, beautiful town halls, majestic castles, and it's just a captivating, naturally beautiful place to be in. Really contributes to the peaceful vibe of the country. Of course, we have to mention Sweden. They come in at number 9. So Sweden, of course, is located in the far north of Europe, and Sweden is one of the most beautiful Scandinavian countries on the planet. The country has very low levels of robbery. Only 9,000 of them happen per year. Compared to the United States, that number is at 350,000 plus. There's also very high standards of living as well as generous parenting leave for moms and dads. About 15 months they can take off. Plus they have a great welfare system. And of course that justifies why it's ranked so high as one of the peaceful countries in the world. Canada is up next at number 8. So Canada has one of the best standards of living in the entire world. Now, if you've ever been to places like Toronto, even to Niagara Falls, you'll see why Canada is so awesome. It's clean, it's very diverse, there's a lot of gorgeous people that live in Canada. You know? So with the peaceful country that Canada is, you'll also find beautiful landscapes that make it a great place to live, as well as for photography and people that just love exploring nature. People are also very polite in Canada. Like, they will literally apologize to you if you accidentally walk into them and bump them on the street. That's a true fact. Moving on now to number 7, we have Finland. Finland is considered one of the most peaceful countries and most livable countries on the planet. It has one of the best education systems in the world, and our children are given a lot of recesses. And I guess because of that, that's why they have very low rates of ADHD. There's practically no corruption in the country, and you're not gonna find a lot of class distinction in the country as well. People are just sort of seen as equal. And it also scores really high on gender equality as well. Japan comes in at number 6 in this episode. So of course, Japan is one of the most fascinating countries culturally and traditionally in the entire world. It's home to a lot of things. It also has one of the best economies in the world. Japan is also considered the happiest country in all of Asia. Japan is very safe in many aspects. You find that it has a low crime rate as well as no major conflicts with any of its neighboring countries. You'll also find great food, a lot of polite people, as well as a stellar transportation system. These guys, you know, the Japanese, they've definitely built a peaceful and technologically advanced country within a relatively short period of time, despite, you know, their history. With that said, we're moving on to the country at number 5. Switzerland. See what they got going on. There are very low levels of crimes in Switzerland. It's located in the heart of the European Union. Switzerland is a naturally beautiful, fascinating place as well. The country is known for its neutral behavior in regional as well as international global political issues. The country also has a strong diplomatic relation with many other countries around the world, and the authorities have also invested heavily in their people in providing them with great education as well as healthcare services and, a lot of employment benefits. Coming up next, we have the country of Austria. Now, we don't hear about this country too much, but it's a small landlocked country in South Central Europe. And Austria has also moved up on the list when it comes to being one of the most peaceful countries in the world. And that has a lot to do with its stance on certain international political issues. Austria is doing very well. There's no austerity, and it's not being blamed like a lot of its neighboring countries for not saving Europe. But either way, outside of that, Austria definitely has earned its spot on the list of most peaceful countries in the world. New Zealand is up next. Now, it has a very small percentage of its population that's in prison. It has limited military capability, and of course, it has strong relations with Australia. New Zealand is also one of the most unpolluted countries in the entire planet, and New Zealanders get a very generous leave benefits so that they have a lot of time to enjoy the landscapes as well as other attractions that the country has to offer. Now, this episode would not be complete if I didn't mention the country of Denmark. We've talked a lot about this country here on FTD Facts, but Denmark holds the second place in this episode as the most peaceful country in the world. So similar to New Zealand, Denmark and the rest of the North European countries consistently rank as the best when it comes to safety. Denmark is also the most peaceful nation on the continent of Europe. Taxation is high, but the money, of course, is well spent on making the Danish lifestyle really relaxed, well organized, and just all around great. But with that all said, it was not enough to come in at number 1 as the most peaceful country. That goes to Iceland. Apart from its crazy icy scenery, it's reported that Iceland has a 100% literacy rate and has a population of over 300,000 people. So of course, it's one of the most educated countries in the world. Icelanders are also known to be very tolerant towards minorities. So that of course is a huge plus. And also one of the best things that you'll find about Iceland is that its murder rates are very low. Only 1.8 per 100,000 of its population are murdered every single year. Of course, murders are practically non-existent. So no doubt that this country is a really safe place to live and overall a peaceful country. That's why it's number 1 in this episode. Now, the country that comes in at number 10 is Czechia. Czechia, aka Czech Republic. This country is located in Central Europe, and Czechia has recently fallen a few spots in terms of its safety. But over the last decade, the country has shown a lot of improvement in several areas, including political stability and personal security, as well as international relations. Hundreds of thousands of people visit Czechia from the UK as well as other places each and every year, and most of those visits were trouble-free. The FCO states that even though there is no recent history of threats of terror in the country, attacks can't be ruled out 100% though. The country at number 9 is Japan. Japan has quite a bit of disparities when it comes to safety. Japan also has a single natural hazard score of 10, and that's actually the maximum level of risk within the Inform Index. And this is a way really to understand and measure the risk of humanitarian crises. However, the country does have the 10th highest coping capacity of all recorded countries. And by the way, coping capacity is the way in which people and organizations use resources to address and manage issues. Moving on to number 8, we have Slovenia. The country of Slovenia is actually up 2 places from the previous report. And this is a European country, and it has no recent history of terror threats in any form. And this is according to the FCO. Slovenia isn't a country high on many people's radar, with just over 2 million people. And this is not really a fact, but there's a legend that's attached to Slovenia that says that when God was distributing the land to all the different nations, he actually forgot about Slovenia, and to make up for that, he gave them a little piece of paradise. So yeah, Slovenia's territory is half covered with forests and has one of the highest levels of biodiversity in all of Europe. So yeah, little taste of heaven in that country. We have Singapore at number 7, and they moved up 2 spots from the previous report. Now Singapore saw approximately 18.5 million visitors over the past year, and this is based on the most recent numbers. Most of the visits though were no trouble at all, yet the FCO deems attacks as likely to happen on Singapore. Woohoo! We made it! Number 6, Canada. So unlike our neighbors down south, the United States, Canada is still one of the safest and most peaceful countries on the planet. In 2019, Canada showed a small improvement in the overall score, and this was according to the GPI. Now the GPI reported that militarization improved slightly in the country, and this was based on fewer weapon imports into the US and reduced weapons export and nuclear and heavy weapons capabilities in Canada. Halfway into number 5, we have the country of Denmark. Denmark was one of 24 countries that had a reduction in terror threat impact in the year 2019. Now attacks in Denmark can't be fully ruled out according to the FCO, but the country also has the autonomous territory of Greenland under its dominion, and Greenland is not connected to Denmark. It's a massive island country, so it makes Denmark a more attractive place when it comes to being a country that you want to be in if World War III actually happens. Next up we have Austria. Austria unfortunately fell 1 place from the previous report. However, according to the UK Foreign Exchange and Commonwealth Office, just under 1 million British nationalists visit Austria every single year, and that number goes into the millions if you look at the visitors it has from other countries. And most of those visits, yep, people didn't experience any trouble at all. And when it comes to attacks on Austria, well, they can't be ruled out either. That's how they're classified. The country number 3 is Portugal. Portugal has risen 2 spots from the previous report, and the country was officially neutral during World War II and has kept out of most foreign conflicts. Now, Portugal is one of the countries that has shown the largest improvement in positive peace since the year 2013, and this is according to the Global Peace Index. Number 2 brings us New Zealand. New Zealand, which has come in 2nd place for the past 2 years actually. It maintained or improved its scores in 22 areas. However, it did see a decline in the impact of attacks because of the March 15, 2019 attack on 2 mosques in Christchurch. Now, improvements in 5 other areas though helped New Zealand maintain its rank as the 2nd most peaceful country in the entire world. And of course, at number 1, it's Iceland. Iceland again. Yeah, this country, honestly, it's been the number 1 most peaceful country forever, and also the safest country. Like really, it's an island country, it shares the borders with no other country, so of course it makes it a very safe option for protection. According to the GPI, half of the countries in Europe, which is considered to be the world's most peaceful nation, have deteriorated in peacefulness since the year 2008. Iceland, on the other hand, is the only Nordic country that is more peaceful now than it was in 2008.
10, we've actually got 2 countries in a tie. We have Ireland and Japan. Rising 2 spots to a tie with Japan at number 10, Ireland falls within the world's 10 most peaceful countries and comes in at Europe's number 8. Ireland is one of the absolute lowest ranked countries in terms of the economic cost of violence in the country as a percent of GDP spending, a meager 3.1%. For comparison, the number 1 highest spender in this category is Syria, where violence costs the country a whopping 66.9% of its GDP. Falling 1 spot to tie with Ireland is Japan, still ranking as one of the most peaceful countries in the world. Japan is known as being one of the safest countries with extremely low rates of crime. Compared to the United States, Japan has 4 times less violent crime per capita. They also have no professional military, only an internal security force. Next up, we have Switzerland. Though it comes in 2 places lower than the last GPI ranking, Switzerland continues to be consistently ranked in the top 10 of most peaceful countries in the world. Switzerland is notable on this year's GPI ranking for being the only European country in the top 5 lowest states when it came to ongoing domestic or international conflict. Coming in at number 8, we have Canada. Of course, known as having some of the kindest people and most apologetic people, Canada is on the list. Under the leadership of global citizen and Star Wars fan Justin Trudeau, Canada retained its position as the 8th most peaceful country on the planet. Since the last ranking, Canada saw marginal improvements in its weapons exports and involvement in international conflict. It seems like the stereotype of the friendly Canadian may have some basis in reality. Proud to call this my home country. All right, the country in 7th place is Slovenia. The Central European country of Slovenia climbed an impressive 3 spots to number 7 in the 2017 GPI rankings. Of countries in Europe, Slovenia comes in at number 3 when it comes to low levels of militarization, a testament to the country's focus on sustainable tourism as opposed to armed conflict. Residents of the nation can be proud to boast not only some of the most gorgeous natural beauty in the world, but also some of the most peaceful practices. Moving on to Czech Republic. In a year when many countries made improvements in their ranking, Czech Republic retained its ranking of number 6 by showing improvements across a broad swath of peace indicators. Most notably, Czech Republic improved in measures of good relations with neighbors and the acceptance of the rights of others. This is quite a feat considering that about half of all European nations declined in one or both of these measures from 2005 to 2015. And coming in at number 5, we have the country of Denmark. Though Denmark ranks in the top 5 of the world's most peaceful countries, Danes will be disappointed that their ranking dropped by 3 points. Regardless, the Nordic land, known for amazing architecture and snowy winters, still showed improvements across 6 out of 8 indicators of peacefulness. And Austria comes in at number 4, falling a single spot from the coveted top 3 list. However, this slight fluctuation in their ranking should not take away from the exemplary peacefulness the country continues to exhibit. In Europe, the average free flow of information measure dropped 5%, with each country that got worse in this category deteriorating by an average of 10%. Austria was one of the few countries to buck this trend, improving their score on the measure by 5.6%. And coming in at number 3, the home of my heart, rising 2 spots, Portugal cracked the top 3 to become one of the most peaceful countries on the planet. The same country that gave the world the most exemplary specimen of humanity in Cristiano Ronaldo is now offering their entire nation as an example of the best we can strive for. Less than 5 years ago, Portugal was ranked number 16, making this year's ranking very impressive. All right, up next we have New Zealand. Now, despite the hundreds of thousands of orcs and elves who died during the filming of Lord of the Rings, New Zealand is once again ranked among the world's most peaceful nations. Rising from number 4 last year to number 2 this year, New Zealand saw improvements in almost every category and are ranked in the top 10 for almost every single one. And coming in first place, the gold medal goes to Iceland. Since 2008, the country has been the undisputed number 1 ranked most peaceful nation in the world. It ranks at the very top in just about every single measure on the GPI, including being number 1 in social safety and security and militarization. Contrary to its name, Iceland seems to be a land of very warm-hearted people.